Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fortified Life podcast, where we are passionate about developing a dependency on Jesus in the marketplace. I'm your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify. Every week, we have the opportunity to bring on all kinds of guests, authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, CEOs. And they're all passionate about putting God back in business. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited for our guest this week. Powerful man of God, and he is a outstanding speaker, and he has a way with words, and we'll get into that with his book. But let me introduce him to you before we get the conversation started. Randy Gravitt is not just a speaker, he's a proven leader, an author, and a seasoned coach. His words, both in his books and during his engaging talks, resonate with leaders across the globe, challenging them to lead lives marked by authenticity and integrity. Randy's passion lies in cultivating integrity-driven leaders who excel in every facet of their lives. For Randy, leadership is not just a career, it's a calling. He has dedicated his life to helping leaders create clarity, grow capacity, and foster growth of their business. Randy's unwavering commitment to leadership development inspires leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Fortified Life, Randy Gravitt. Randy, what's going on, sir?
Hey, Jason, thank you. That all sounds really great, that introduction, but I don't have a cool nickname, like Mr. Fortified. I love that. I love that you got a nickname there. That's cool. So thanks for having me.
Hey,
Thanks for all you do for leaders. It's awesome.
absolutely, Randy. And to that point, that's kind of a perfect opening. People look at your bio, and God has certainly graced you to do a lot of things in your career. But Randy, you know how it is in this social media microwave world and generation. You know, you just didn't wake up doing everything that you've been doing today. So kind of take us back and take us on a journey of how you got to where you are today.
Well, I would say, first of all, it has been a lot more about God than it has been about me. But yeah, he's been good, and even when I wasn't good, he's been good. So
Mm.
that's the main thing. But I grew up in a little small town in North Georgia. Mom and dad, brother and sister up there. Just a little country boy, honestly, and grew up. Ended up going to college over. Well, I went to Young Harris for a year when it was still a junior college back in the day, and then I
Oh,
ended
wow.
up at Jacksonville State in Alabama for 3 years, and then met my wife during those days. She's an Auburn girl, so we met when we were in college and got married, and um, really was passionate about helping leaders. I started out coaching and teaching in high school, which was a lot of fun. Learned a lot, grew a lot. Probably wasn't qualified. I guess all along, maybe was not qualified for every position I've had, but thankfully, God's been faithful through all of it, and we were passionate about helping leaders on the front end. Had lots of opportunities. Moved to Atlanta, moved back to Atlanta after a little brief stop in Knoxville. Back to Atlanta in '96. We just had the Summer Olympics here a few weeks ago. It was the Summer Olympics when we moved in July of '96 down here, and then spent nearly 20 years working in nonprofit work, and then 11 years ago started a company helping organizations and leaders chase high performance and effectiveness. And so we've had the blessing of working with Chick-fil-A and all kind of college and professional sports teams and businesses, and I mean, you name it. It's been. I mean, honestly, looking back, I don't know how a lot of it happened, but we're grateful that it has, and love every time we get a chance to encourage and equip leaders.
Absolutely, Randy. And it obviously very extensive experience. A question that comes up a lot in our community, Randy, is how do you make transitions? And you made a transition from the nonprofit space to a business. And we know that those types of things don't happen overnight. So, Randy, what was that transition like for you?
Well, it's kind of crazy. I was going to be 50 at the time. We've got 4 daughters. I didn't mention that part of our lives. Laura and I have been married now 37 years. And so this is 11 years ago. We're neck deep into 2 of them in college, and 2 were wanting to go to college. And we were assuming we would have 4 weddings to pay for. And so it just made no sense at all to think about this. But I really felt like God was saying, you need to transition. And I had a heart to try to help more leaders. I had a really great spot where I was, but I'd been there a long time, and felt like I had probably plateaued. And I thought, I want to see if I can help some more people. And I gave myself this little speech, which was kind of crazy. I'm thinking, if I don't do this, I'm going to get old, be an old man, and I'm going to have regret that I didn't give it a shot. And
Mm,
I'll actually be disappointed that I didn't try it. And I told myself, if I do it, if I jump out, and I was just trying to on my own at the time. I had no idea that I was going to have a company with all these people, and all these businesses we're able to help now, which is fun. But back then, I was just, can I make a living doing this on my own? And so I thought, if I can't pull it off, I'll be disappointed that I don't have what it takes, but I won't have any regret. And literally, my speech was, I can live with disappointment. I don't want to live with regret. And that's
ooh,
what I
that's
told
good.
myself. And so my wife and the girls were all very encouraging. They said, go for it. You can always get another job, but you need to see what happens here. And so they were probably more courageous than I was. I kept going to the Bible. I'm a big Bible reader. I love to read the Bible. And I kept going to the Bible thinking I was going to find the verse that says, be ye comfortable. And that's not in there. So you listen, they're thinking about reading the Bible. You won't find that. But what you will find over and over, Jason, is God reminds us, be courageous, be courageous, be courageous. And
Mm,
so that transition that happened for me, there was some courage on my side that took place, but God was waiting on me. He's always waiting on us. He's got stuff planned, and he really does do beyond all we could ask or imagine. And so looking back now, it's, you know, courage is like a muscle. When you work it out, it grows, and if you don't, it atrophies. But it's gotten stronger as we've gone, and yet courage is still required. You don't get to just show it one time. You got to keep living with courage. And so, if anybody's listening that's out there, you're feeling stuck, I would encourage you to just really lean into God's best, because it's God's people are people on the move, and they're people who are leaning in and engaged. And I had probably lost some of my heart at the point where I needed to be renewed. And so, yeah, all that happened. And I think the courage piece, but God was way ahead of me and way bigger. And he had a lot more to do with the things that have happened. We've worked really hard, but God's, he's opened doors, and, all that stuff that I never could have made happen. So we're very grateful.
mm. Randy, you dropped a few golden nuggets just in that conversation. You said that you could live with disappointment, not regret. So, Randy, when you came to that conclusion, and we think about, especially in the marketplace, where in business we say risk, but in the spiritually we say faith. What do you think holds people back from taking that step of faith, especially in the marketplace? Because, like you said, you had that moment where you felt like you were plateauing, and then you had that sense of, I don't want regrets. And really, Randy, that was a decision. You made a decision. And so, but what are some of the things that maybe hold other people back from taking that step? Because there had to be a catalyst, and there was that Holy Spirit moment for you, but it just maybe encourage some of the other folks who may be in that position currently.
Yeah, well, I'll say this before I answer the question. I literally was at the place where I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, I need your blessing. I'm going to quit my job. If you can't," and I told him, I said, and I've known him for 25 years. I said, "If you can't give me your blessing, I'm still going to quit." I mean, so I was like, this has got, it was a decision. I mean, it really was a decision. And I had the people around me that were with me, and so I felt good about the decision. But I can't tell you how scared I was. And I think that's the answer to the question. It's fear. I mean, I think sometimes we're
Mm,
like, what's going to happen if I try this and I don't have what it takes. And for me, I was pretty confident that I could, I didn't know if this would work, but I knew that I could be employed. And, I mean, I really wasn't worried. I'm not a big worrier,
Mhm.
but I was, you're just, at that point, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And because I felt responsible for our family. I wanted to.
Right.
My wife was teaching school at the time, but I just, I knew I had these kids, and we were trying to provide for them and make sure they had what they needed. And so it was who quits their job at 50? It just seems like the dumbest thing in the world to do, but it was what I knew I needed to do. And it was very quickly, I began to see some fruit from that decision. And it honestly, it exceeded anything I could have imagined that first only 8 months, 9 months, I guess. I started April 1st. And by the end of the year, it was just crazy what was going on. And then in the second year, I actually doubled the income of the first year, which was
Mm.
pretty extraordinary looking back. And then and then I had more stuff going on than I knew what to do with. So I hired a guy to help me, a buddy of mine. He came and helped me, and he was a brilliant consultant and coach. And he came on and helped. And then he and I doubled that in year 3. And so it was just like, it was crazy at the time, So I'm starting to see, like, it's like when you make a decision, it's one, are you excited about it?
Mm.
But is there also affirmation? I mean, if there's no affirmation from the people around, then it might not be a good decision. Is there fruit from it? And pretty quickly I could see I think this is going to work. And now as I look back a decade later, I think we got 24 people now on our team that are helping with what we're
Wow.
doing. And so it's like, if you'd have told me then you're gonna have 24 people, I would have go, okay, this is no problem. There's no fear there. But
Yeah.
but now, month by month now, it takes a lot of faith to have 24 people as well. So it's just, I think our faith grows as our courage grows. And our courage grows as our faith grows. It's like a snowball almost. And yet if I go back to those last couple of years before I made the transition, I was pretty miserable in some ways when it comes to my, uh, I won't say I was going through the motions, but I just had lost heart. I mean, I was just not at a good spot. I was stuck, is the way I say it. And we ended up, my friend
Mm.
Dan Webster and I wrote a book called Unstuck back at that time, which was a book that just any leader that's going through one of those transitions, I would recommend that book. And I mean, shameless plug for the book, but it's a great tool to help people in those phases of life. I mean, if you think about it, when we first start out, we're all excited. Then we don't know what we're doing. We start we start learning the fundamentals, and then we get to a point where we sort of know the answers to the test. We've been doing it for a while. Well, all of
Mhm.
us, I mean, whether it's vocationally or relationally or physically or financially, pick any area of your life, we get to a point where we hit a stop sign and we're like, there's got to be more. And
Mm.
and we've got a couple of options at that point. We get in midlife, if we're at that spot, you can we we hear people all the time. They go buy a little red sports car and have an affair and medicate with substances and habits and all kind of stuff, and that never works out. I mean, it's just like that. That's not going to um, that is not going to fulfill what's in us. It's just not. Well, there's this other side where if we really, Henry Nouwen says it this way. Back in the day, he's a great thinker, and he said the courageous leader is not the one who blazes a trail into the future. The courageous leader is the one who blazes a trail into his or her own heart. And I
Mm.
think when we really understand that there's this almost mourning, that I had put my hope in this job or this relationship or this exercise program, pick whatever, it doesn't matter. And now the gig's up. That's not really where my satisfaction comes from. Well, we understand that. Now we can get to a place of wisdom. And I think we experienced renewal, and that really happened for me. It was just so great. So yeah, I think for anybody that's going through transition, it's easy to look at somebody who's gone through transition and it's worked and
Mhm.
thought, well, that's easy. But let me remind everybody, there was some hard right before it that was painful, and just, it is like you'll almost lose your heart if you're not careful. And so I think the cool thing is we get a chance to have renewal if we can deal with that perspective.
Wow. Randy, appreciate your transparency and sharing. Uh, so Randy, you take the step of faith, you transition, and now you're working with various different organizations, and leadership development comes up. Of all the things to lean into from a coaching and consulting perspective, why leadership development, Randy? Why kind of park there when it comes to organizational effectiveness?
Yeah. Well, that's a fantastic question. I think, and I have a, I have a bias on this, I guess. Well, for one, I think like a leader, I am a leader, I believe in leadership so heavily because I look back in the times of my life, Jason, where I've had a good leader. Go all the way back to when I was a kid. If I had a good coach or if I had a good teacher, it just made the class better. It made the sport more fun. It made the winning more possible. If we've got a good leader, it just makes it good for us, whoever we are. If we're in a family and our mom and dad are good leaders, it makes it better for the kids. If you've ever been in a situation where you had a bad coach or a bad teacher or a bad leader, it makes it bad for everybody. And so I really do believe in a world well led. I mean, that's what I dream about. I dream about how cool would it be if everybody had a great leader in the world. I mean, that would just be amazing. And yet we look around and politically, and I mean, it doesn't matter which way you vote or in education. I was in education for a long time, but I've got a bunch of teacher friends who are telling me it's really hard out here. And it's like the government's not about to fix all the problems. And education, although it's important, it's not going to fix everything. But I think when leaders lean in and they lead well, it actually does make it better it might not change the world, but it changes the world around them. And so
Mm.
I'm a big believer in that. We started in the very beginning when I jumped out of the boat, so to speak. I started working with Chick-fil-A. I was doing a lot of training and coaching for their leaders and their organization. And I'm teaching them about teams and about organizational stuff, which was great. But I'm learning so much from them as well as I'm doing that and watching their organization. And then all of a sudden, I get to branch out, and all these other companies and teams are calling, and just we've learned so much from the people that we've had a chance to work with. But the idea of it being about leadership, to me, there are other people that can help other people, but leaders need help. They need encouragement. They need perspective. They need challenge. They need process. I mean, when I look back to when I was teaching school early on, I spent a few years teaching school, and the very first year I taught, I started at Christmas. It's a weird story. I wasn't qualified to teach. I didn't have a teaching degree, but the person who hired me, this principal, was pretty desperate. Christmas break, I called about a football job. I was wanting to coach football in the following fall, and this principal had given me her name and number early the previous summer. Didn't have a job. She said, "Call me at Christmas." And so I call her on a Friday afternoon, the day at Christmas break is starting, and she says to me, she says, "It's not football season. Why are you calling?" And I'm like, "Well, you said call." And anyway, long story short, she says, "Do you teach?" And I'm like, "No, I don't teach at all." And then she kind of tipped her hand of desperation when she says, "Do you teach biology?" And I'm like, "I don't even I just said I don't teach." And then she says, "Have you taken biology?" And I'm like, "This woman is needing a teacher, it sounds like." So I said, "I actually have taken it." And so anyway, long story short, 3 weeks later, I'm teaching ninth grade biology in a high school out in Fort Worth. And I literally, Jason, would read the night before and stayed a day ahead of the ninth graders, which was not, it sounds
Wow.
like, wow, that you could do that, but they didn't want to be in there any more than I did. It was like we were all kind of learning biology together. Well, the following fall, I got to go back and what happened that summer was the principal's now like, you've got to have a scope and sequence. You can't just wing it. You've got to have you got to have some lesson plans, and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And I think about leadership that way. I think so many of us now, we don't have a scope and sequence and a process for how
Mm,
we train and develop leaders. You promote me, and your training to me is, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And like, that's
wow.
like, you didn't teach me how to lead a meeting or build a team or solve a problem or any of that stuff. And yet now I'm out here struggling. And how many people are listening and they've just got everything sort of duct taped together? Well, when we started thinking about this scope and sequence mindset, it's almost like if you have a kid, I know you guys are getting ready to have a kid. There's going to come a point what they're going to go to first grade. When they go to first grade, they're not going to get a trigonometry book on day one of first grade. They're going to get some numbers, and they'll learn to count, and then they'll add them up and subtract them and multiply and divide and algebra, geometry. They might get to trigonometry, but they're not getting trig on day one. I think so many times in leadership, we don't understand that we've got people around us that have not been developed and trained, and we don't have a process. And so our whole deal is we created a process for leader development. How do you become a better leader? How do you improve or build a team? And ultimately, how do you strengthen your organization with a company like Chick-fil-A? And so it's there's got to be a process, or it just becomes random acts of training. We're reading the latest greatest book, and I read all those books, it's great, but if I'm not careful, I'll just grab at stuff and not really have a way to produce what we're trying to do. And so when you put this in a company, it's pretty cool how they start making progress and making more money, making more profit, and all that's great, but they make a greater impact. They create better jobs, they have a better culture, all that stuff too. So it's that's a long answer, but at the end of the day, I believe leadership is the key to the whole thing. If we have good leaders, again, I'll just simplify it back to, it makes it better for everybody when they're well led.
Mm, so good, Randy. Scope, process, and a sequence. My goodness. Folks, I bet you didn't know you're getting a little leadership seminar here.
Yeah, sorry, man.
No, that's great stuff, Randy. We need that talked about more, because to your point, Randy, there's a lot of people, um whether they're have their own business and they're leading folks, or they work in the corporate space, and I hear that advice a lot. Hey, you get promoted, hey, let me know if you need something, and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. So I do appreciate you shedding light on that. Like, hey, let's have a process to make leaders that make more leaders. My goodness. Randy, it's interesting, getting to your book here. So leadership makes everything better for everyone else, and that's a form of winning, right? But I love the title of one of your latest books, Winning Begins at Home. So, Randy, what was the inspiration for writing this book, and what are some of the key takeaways you want readers to leave once they put the pages down?
Yeah, that's great. So years ago, I was doing some work. I've worked with the coaching staff from the Pittsburgh Pirates for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I was in camp one year speaking to their coaches about how do you win outside of work, and winning at work. And I like the metaphor, or I say metaphor, I like the picture of home plate in a baseball game. And I came up with this idea of your coaching begins at home, kind of thing. And I'm playing off the dual definition there of home, literally your
Mhm.
home, and home plate is where your work is. And so that's kind of, some of that started there. I'd already been thinking about this idea for a little bit before that. And then what happened was, as we started helping these companies and all these organizations, they start applying what we're talking about, and all of a sudden their companies are getting better. They're really, got a great ROI on what we're doing, which is fun. But I had so many executives tell me I'm struggling outside of work, and my people are not doing well outside of work. And we talked to
Mm.
in the middle of the organization, and I just, at the time, the language I gave to what they were telling me was, if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I don't think the
Yeah.
goal is to build a great company and blow up your family. I mean, I know so many people and I know there are people whose families have not worked out, and yet a lot of them have told me, it's just, that is my biggest regret. And
Yeah.
most people they do regret it if they blow up their company. I mean, they would. I mean, they really would. They want to win at work as well. But we can start another we can start another company. Sometimes we can do damage though in those relationships at home that are irreparable. And I think we want to make sure that the relationships that matter most are getting at least equal, if not more attention than others. And so when we create all this content that we do for these organizations, I started hearing this over and over. How do we win outside of work? How do we win outside of work? And I couldn't really find it. I mean, you can find marriage and parenting books, but I couldn't find anything for leaders on how to create a blueprint for your home and for your family. And so I thought we'll just write it. And so we did. It's been great. I mean, we got a lot of people who are not only it's helped them, but they're actually now giving it to their employees, and they're all talking about it together. And you
Wow.
still need to talk about all this other stuff. You got to grow your business, or you're going to be out of business. But I think if leaders understand the impact that they can have on the lives of the people that are giving their lives really to serve and help and build those companies, I think we have a chance to create that environment for the people on our teams. And if we do that, man, it's going to make it a lot better place to work. And the other thing is, Jason, if a person is successful outside of work, I think it actually positions them to be better to win at work. And
Mm,
so, I've had people before tell me, we tell all our people to check their heart at the door. Well, that's not going to work. I mean, people are people. If your kid's got a trigonometry test the next day and everything blows up on the way to school, they're bringing that to work with them. Or if your dad just got a diagnosis over the weekend and you're coming in,
yeah.
nobody even knows that. I mean, we bring our whole heart with us to work. And
Yeah.
I'll use your fortified life mindset. I mean, I think if you really want to fortify your company, you have healthy people working in your company's going to be healthier. So it just protects the company, protects the families, all that stuff. So I think it's a topic that has not been talked about enough. I don't,
Yeah.
somebody asked me, why are you doing this? And as I started down this road, I couldn't find anything else on it. And I talked to a publisher, and he said the reason nobody's written anything on this is because it won't sell.
Mm,
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not literally trying to sell books. I'm trying to help people. So I don't make my living selling books. So thankfully, John Maxwell's team decided to publish it. So that was great. So I'm excited about that. But there are people that just go, you can't talk about this stuff. And I don't buy that. I think there are a lot of great people out there who are godly leaders who care about their people. They're not their people. They're just people. They care about people, and they really want to make things better for them. And that's really what we were trying to do. So we thought, how do we create some fundamentals there? Because if you think about it, winning at work, it's sort of almost easier to go to work. If I'm like, I get promoted at work, I can get a raise at work, I can build something and get a goal and check it off at work. I know kind of what to do. I'm getting a
mhm.
performance review. When I go home, I don't know what to do. I know I want it to be right, but I don't know, like, okay, what do I do? And so we thought, okay, let's create these fundamentals for a family. And how would you build a blueprint to have the family you want? Or how would you create a blueprint to have the family you want, build the family you want? And so that's what we did.
Mm. So good, Randy. I love the boldness and the courage you showed that people just in your ear, oh, this concept is not going to sell. And I love for you just kind of planting the flag in the ground and saying, no, this is something that needs to be talked about. And I couldn't agree more with you, Randy. There's constantly this tension between the workplace and at home. And so you shedding light on this topic is huge. It's huge. So I got a copy myself, Randy. So folks, you want to make sure you go out and grab a copy here. We'll have everything in the show notes. One of the unique things that comes up in the book, Randy, too, is we know Jesus taught in parables, right? Can you talk to us about the share a bit about the parable of the businessman John Williams and some of the lessons there for the readers?
Yeah, well, Jesus is one of my heroes, for sure. So, and I like that he did that. I mean, I think there's so many. I think our brains work in story, and I'm a storyteller. So
Mhm.
so that's kind of the way I think. I see the world in stories, and so I thought, okay, let's create a story here that everybody can relate to. You'll find yourself in pieces of all these characters, and it will create. I think as a communicator, I'm always trying to create angst in the person who's listening. But I remind myself often, and this is why I think the publishers, to me, publishers are trying to sell books. I mean, they're looking at like
Right.
their bottom line. I heard somebody say one time, a book is not about something, a book is for someone. And
Mm.
I love that. To me, I'm thinking about the people who are going to read this. I'm thinking about them when I'm writing this. I was like, how do we help them? Because these are real people. And all the people you said it just a minute ago. I love this idea. Well, I do too. I mean, it's like all the people, all the real people I'm talking to are leading real companies and real families and real stuff. They're like, this is a great idea. Let's talk about this. And so publishers may not want to hear about it, but to me, it's a topic that real people are like, they really do want to have a good stuff outside of work. I mean, it's like I don't know anybody's like, I don't really care about my life outside of work that's really thriving. I mean, I think there's a hole there if we do that. So yeah, that was kind of the for me, that was the catalyst for it. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that's to me that's the deal.
Yeah. Good old parables, folks.
Yeah, yeah.
Right
I will say
out of
this. I
scripture.
should mention this as well. The front 120 pages is the story, and then there's a
Mhm.
70 blueprint in the back where you actually you get to write your own story and work through your own story and what's important and how do you define winning and all that. It's like if you're going to build a house, you would need a blueprint. You wouldn't go to the lumber yard and get some boards and come home and start nailing them together. You got a plan, and you got probably a builder, and you
Yeah.
got someone helping you. And so hopefully this book is going to help people with those fundamentals to the question I ask in the book, and people will see this, is how do you live your life in such a way that the people who know you the best actually love you the most? And
Mm.
and this blueprint is going to help you design a life. You're either going to have a family by design or you're going to have one by default. And if you leave it to chance and you
Mm.
don't give any thought to it, it's just not likely to turn out the way you want it to. But if you will really design it and think through some of these questions that we list in there, I think the people who know you the best might not just love you the most; they might actually like you too. How cool would that be? So, it, I think our families would be better if we just apply some of the stuff that we're talking about here. So, yeah, I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be great.
I love it. Not just be loved, but be liked too. And then, Randy, I love the practicality of the book. Is Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say one more thing. I know so many people, the people who know them the best actually respect them the least. They're one way at work when
Mm.
they come home, and the people that really know them, and that's not what we want. So yeah, back to
Yeah.
what you're going to about practicality. I just want to remind people we
No,
we got
yeah. I love that. That's it's a harsh reality check too, Randy. So I'm glad you mentioned that there at the end as well. Um, I was just talking about the practicality of the book because you have the story, first 120, and then the back 70. Almost like this self-evaluating exercise. So, folks, as you're listening to Randy share this, not only are you going to get a power pack story full of wisdom, you're going to get like you've got some homework to do, right? But in a good way, because this conversation, to Randy's point, God gave him this idea, and this is a conversation that a lot of people are already talking about and struggling with. So to have a blueprint that you can go take inventory, answer some questions, maybe sit down with your significant other and children. So I just love how you have it laid out, Randy.
Yeah, I love the idea of a family, husband or your wife, getting around a table together and deciding what kind of family do we want. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that's just huge, and we walk you through all that, and yeah, it's great. And I do think I will say this. I think I always say hope when we're working with businesses. We always say hope is not a strategy. You don't hope your way to high performance. You behave your way to high performance. And I think the
Mhm.
same through at home. I hope my home changes. Maybe things will get better. That's not that's not what we want. We've got to be intentional to design what we want and then walk toward that. And it's amazing how much we'll make progress if we'll just take those little baby steps.
Love it. Love it. Randy, where can people get a copy of the book?
Yeah, they can get it anywhere they read books, or get their books. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There is an audio book available as well, at Amazon. You can go to our website, if you want to get it there. Leadeveryday.com. I'll mention we have an academy, that we have a course in there as well, and I'll say more about that in a minute. But just, yeah, we've got all kind of tools and resources there for leaders. But this thing's available. Just winning begins at home. Anywhere you get your books, you should be able to find it.
I love it. And Randy, I was going to say you dropped too much of a teaser there. You already showed the value of the book, but now you've got an academy. Tell us more.
Well, when you and I were talking offline, you said what's something you're excited about, and I
Yeah.
didn't. But we have a so my friend Mark Miller, he and I lead this company, Lead Every Day, and this company that I've had for several years. But Mark has joined me. Mark spent 40 plus years at Chick-fil-A corporate, and now
Mhm.
he's been helping for the last year. And we just do a lot of leadership development stuff. We've created an academy, Lead Every Day Academy. And then anybody wants info on it, go to leadeverydayacademy.com. It's a subscription thing. And all the stuff that we teach to Chick-fil-A and all these businesses, there's a digital experience there with, I think we have 7, soon to be 9 courses in there, over 100 modules. It's short. How would I say? It's millennial friendly. They're 3 to 5 minute videos. That's probably still long for millennial, but they're micro, modules that you can develop your people with, which are great. But we created I did a winning begins at home course and stuck in there to go with the stuff we do on culture and the fundamentals of leadership and team building and all that stuff. It's all there. So yeah, we did a winning begins at home course too, which I thought would help some people as they work through some of this material.
Yeah, folks, make sure you check that out. If you're liking what Randy is saying, you'll definitely love Mark Miller. He's got a lot of great books and content, another leadership development
My hero. Yeah,
expert for
he's great.
sure. Yeah. There's something in the water at Chick-fil-A with leadership.
That's for
Everybody
sure.
that comes through there, whether it's someone consulting for them or them developing something internally, the God has his hand on them for sure. Randy, you've given so much value. You've talked about background, the new book, um, upcoming projects. Randy, as you look ahead to 2025, what do you personally see happening in your side of the business for 2025? I know you've got the academy and the courses, but what's on the horizon for 2025?
Well, one of the things that has been fun through the years is the thing has just grown so much. It's been crazy. But I look at it now as the leader of it and the owner of it, and I'm if I look myself in the mirror, which I do often, in an assessment way, not in a look at the way you look way. But as I'm assessing myself, I think the thing could be, I think the company could be even better if it weren't for me. Frankly, I mean, it's like, you look, if you're really truthful, if your company's not doing what it could do, and ours has been pretty amazing, and I'm proud of all that. But as I look at all the people who need help, there are just so many people. I keep reminding myself, you're the bottleneck of this if you're not careful. And so one of the things that
Mm,
we've done is we created a leadership team that is we're about to add our potentially last person to the last seat at that table, which I heard somebody say one time that if you have a performance gap, something you feel like you could do more, oftentimes we underestimate how much it could be a structure problem. Our capacity
mm.
grows when we have structure that will support it. And so I don't know that this is the answer to the question you were expecting, but I'm actually excited that we're adding a guy to our leadership table, which I think will help us operationalize things even better. It's the team of people we have is pretty extraordinary. They've done a great job, but I think we're going to get a little more firepower at our table, and I think we're going to be able to help a lot more leaders next year. So we're all very excited about it. It's a cool thing to get up and feel like you're helping people get better, because to me, when leaders win, everybody around them wins. This goes back to what I said
Yeah.
earlier. We can help leaders. We're helping a lot of people, and I know your listeners are out there. They're doing a lot of great stuff, and I would just encourage them to not underestimate how much your influence matters. You're if you're the leader, the leader's voice is the loudest voice, but the leader's example is louder than her voice. And so let's don't forget that, and let's continue to lead well. I mean, that's to me, that's what it's all about. That's being faithful to to steward the opportunity that God's given us. If we do that, I think someday we get to hear well done. And if we don't, I think that's where we'll have regret, honestly.
Mm. Ooh, that'll preach right there, Randy. Well, Randy, we're coming up on time here. Thank you so much for sharing wisdom, your resources. By now, Randy, all the listeners are like, man, Randy, where can I find all this stuff? How can I keep up with you and your content? So if you could give us some links or social media, Randy, on where people can find your books, the courses, the coaching, where are those locations where they can find that?
Well, the company is leadeveryday.com, so they can go there. They can find me at Randy Gravitt on social media. I'm there. We got a little bit of presence there. But if they need me personally, just I'll give you my cell phone number. Let me just give you that, and you can put it in the notes or whatever. It's 678-858-1167. The voicemail stays kind of full, but if people call and I'm available, I'll answer. And if not, you can always text and I'll get back with you. If I can ever serve any of your audience, please have them reach out, Jason.
Love it. Thank you, Randy. Now, folks, he gave his phone number now, so he means well and is serious if he's giving out his number. So Randy, just a huge shout out. Thank you for hanging out with us here on the Fortified Life. I believe people will be greatly impacted by the book and by all your materials. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jason. And seriously, thank you for all you're doing. I love the idea of a fortified life. It's just nothing better than feeling protected. And I know the source of that. And I'm just really grateful that I had an opportunity to hang out with you today.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's all we have time for on this episode of The Fortified Life. You know how we leave things. Don't forget to check out fortifiedlifepodcast.com. The show notes will have all of Randy's contact information and all the ways to answer his resources. But you know how we leave things. Don't compartmentalize your faith in the marketplace. And from the boardroom to the bathroom, God is with you. We'll see you next time on the Fortified Life podcast.